Hello and welcome to The Bottom Line on TVP World. This is where we unpack some of the main business and economic stories of the day. I'm your host, Marie Cato. Today, the Polish government signed the so-called Engineering Development Agreement for the country's first nuclear power plant with U.S. consortium Westinghouse Bechtel. This took place during U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright's visit to Warsaw to meet with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Before we get into the significance of today's events, let's set the scene with Jan Kennedy's feature report.
These signatures mark a major milestone in the development of Poland's first nuclear power plant. On Monday, the company behind the project, called Polish Nuclear Power Plants, signed an agreement with the U.S. nuclear consortium Westinghouse Bechtel. And according to Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, the newly updated document brings much-needed security to the €50 billion project.
The Polish side worked to ensure the agreement better serves our interests as well as those of our partners. Thanks to changes introduced in 16 key areas, this project is now more secure, and the guarantees provided offer a greater sense of safety for everyone involved.
While not yet the final contract, today's signing of the so-called Engineering Development Agreement is seen as a vital bridge ahead of the upcoming major milestones.
We finally have a bridging agreement that is bridging the gap between the design of nuclear reactors in Poland and the final construction agreement. We are ready to discuss further steps when it comes to the agreement on financing scheme with European Commission and the final contract with the Americans.
Although the full details of the deal remain confidential, experts say the updates are designed to flesh out responsibilities of both sides, something that hasn't been clearly defined in the previous contract signed by the former government.
I believe it's the start of a long-term nuclear cooperation between the United States and Poland that will be involved in building future reactors, both here in Poland and in other nations across Europe.
U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright says the deal could spark a wave of nuclear projects, not just in Poland, but across the entire CEE region.
There should be some changes when it comes to the composition of deal, the distribution of responsibility between the parties, and the rules of dealing with any obstacles like delays and other issues with the contract. This is about making it more equal, more adjusted to the needs of the Polish side.
Westinghouse has already signed an agreement to deliver 2 reactors to Bulgaria's Kozloduy power plant and has opened talks with Ukraine, which is eager to reduce its reliance on Russian nuclear technology. The company is also a strong contender for the yet unannounced second nuclear power plant in Poland, for which the government wants more competition. Major players from France and South Korea are expected to present their offers, among others.
If there are other offers, bring them. Look, President Trump is someone who is a deal maker, and if there are other offers that can support this effort, then we should do it.
Currently, the government in Warsaw is waiting for the European Commission's approval of state aid for the project. After this hurdle is cleared, the construction may start in earnest.
The signing of today's contract is viewed as a positive development that adds momentum to Polish-American relations at a critical time. But it also signals that nuclear energy remains top of the energy agenda for Poland. So to get into the details of today's signing, we are joined by Professor Adam Kisiel at the Department of Nuclear Physics at Warsaw University, who is also director of the university's Center for Nuclear and Quantum Technologies. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So I wanted to begin by asking you about the contract and what it brings to the table in terms of Poland's development of its first nuclear power plant. Do you view this as a significant milestone, or perhaps was it something that was actually anticipated?
This was certainly anticipated. However, it is also a crucial step in the development of the Polish nuclear project. This is a necessary agreement that bridges the gap between the contract that was that was specified to design the power plant, and the contract that is actually necessary to build it, the so-called EPC or engineering procurement construction contract, which is a contract for the actual construction of the power plant in a specific place with a specific technology. So it's a necessary step, of course foreseen, but important that it has taken place.
And also in terms of the initial contract, we mustn't forget that it was actually initially signed in 2022, but it expired in March this year. But there's a lot of focus on the changes that have been brought into this engineering development agreement. And I wanted to ask you, can you tell us a little bit more about the changes that we're looking at? Because there's a lot of emphasis on these 16 areas. Are you able to tell us about what these 16 areas are about and perhaps when we might be able to find out more about the details?
Well, unfortunately, as was specified in the material, the details of the contract are the actual confidential agreements between the companies. So we don't yet know what are these 16 specific areas. However, of course, the Polish government is insisting on the so-called local content for the construction of the power plant. So it was necessary to ensure that the contract is constructed in such a way that Polish companies, Polish workers are able to deliver a significant part of this project, but also in such a way that the American companies are confident in actually awarding these contracts to the Polish companies so that the project can go ahead without further delays and without any possibility for extension of costs.
Now that we have this engineering development agreement and it's been signed, can you tell us about what this might mean from a practical perspective, what it might actually mean for the building, the development of the first nuclear power plant? Does it mean that things might speed up a little bit more? Something aside from just the local content from your academic perspective, perhaps?
Yes, well, this contract is actually very important because, as you might know, the works at the actual site of the power plant has already begun. These are currently the works related with the assessment of the geological structure of the terrain, so that we are sure that the construction that is planned is safe and stable. So this contract actually allows the company to continue these works and actually extend them. And also, it is extremely important that before we can even start the construction, several important agreements or green lights might be given by local and state governments and regulatory agencies. And this contract actually allows us to further the works that will then lead into the obtaining of these permissions and then the actual start of the construction, which is now foreseen for 2028.
Earlier on, you mentioned that this contract also looks into the specific technology and that was very much necessary to be secured in terms of building the nuclear power plant. Obviously, in light of your expertise, can you give us any, perhaps any insights and informed opinion as to what kind of technology might be in question?
Well, the technology of the power plant has actually been decided. This is the AP1000 reactor constructed by or provided by the Westinghouse company. And this technology is well known. It's proven. It is actually already being used in the United States in a Vogtle power plant. So it is important for the Polish side to be able to learn about this technology, maybe gain expertise with our American partners. And I hope that the contract that was signed today will also allow us to gain more information and the transfer of knowledge about this technology to Poland so that we can utilize it in a safe and reliable and efficient manner.
Prime Minister Donald Tusk mentioned that this contract allows for much needed security to the 50 billion euro project. Can you figure out more or less when we can get on with significant building?
Well, this is exactly where we are in the process, that we are actually already trying to obtain or working to obtain the so-called permission for construction. This is the fundamental permission that is needed to actually start the construction works. This is a quite complicated process. It also involves another permission that is necessary to be obtained from the State Atomic Energy Agency of Poland, which deals with nuclear safety and regulations related to that. So the contract that was signed today actually allows the Westinghouse and Bechtel consortium to work towards obtaining these permissions. Once they are obtained, only then the actual construction work can be started. And the current hope or the current plan is that the so-called first nuclear concrete will be poured on site in Choczewo in 2028. And thank you. This signing of today's agreement actually makes it realistic, I would say, that such starting of construction will actually begin.
There's one other detail that the Polish government is still awaiting for the EU Commission to give the go-ahead for state aid. And if you could just give us a little bit more insight in regards to that and whether or not there perhaps is a chance that something else might get in the way of that.
Well, it must be emphasized that this procedure of the evaluation of the proposal for state aid for nuclear power plants is a completely normal process. It is expected. The European Commission is always performing such checks. So such checks were fully expected, and the procedure is ongoing according to plan. There are sometimes some specific requirements from the European Commission that needs to be addressed or included in the project. However, such state aid approval has recently been given to the Czech Republic, and it went more or less according to plan. So it's simply one of the many steps that are necessary in this procedure, and we just simply have to go through it. And it's basically the correct time to go through this process right now and await the approval from the European Commission. And hopefully this approval will be given in a timely manner so that it does not bring any additional delay into our project.
So you don't anticipate that there may be any obstacles, that something might get in the way? You assume that this process will take place smoothly?
I expect so, based on the, let's say, experience of similar procedures that have been going on in the past, and specifically, as we mentioned, the Czech Republic has gone through such process very recently. So we expect or hope that such process will go, well, let's say, similarly smoothly as for our partners in the Czech Republic, and we can proceed with the further developments of the project.
Do you have a date in mind when we might get that go-ahead?
Well, the hope is that such process would take about a year. So it was submitted end of last year. So hopefully this year such a approval could be obtained. However, at the same time, the Czech Republic was waiting for about 2 years to obtain such approval. At the same time, we have to realize that the construction of nuclear power plants is something that has not been really done in the European Union for the last few years. There are only a very few of such projects that have been recently done. So it may that be also that such approval will actually go faster now for our case, because the experience from approving such requests for other countries in the past will make it a bit more fast. So hopefully end of this year, maybe middle of next year, such approval can be obtained from the European Commission.
But that's quite interesting because according to the Polish state firm Polskie Elektrownie Jądrowe, this agreement that was signed today claims that the provisions guarantee legally compliant cooperation with Westinghouse Bechtel consortium for only 9 months. So that would suggest that this contract would expire before the go-ahead is given by the EU Commission. So how would that work?
Well, it's we do need to sign with the Westinghouse Bechtel consortium the next contract, which is the contract of EPC. And presumably our partners for Westinghouse and Bechtel would very much would like to have the European Commission approval for state aid before such contract is signed. So any delay in that obtaining of this approval would may let's say delay the negotiations for the final contract. However, let's hope that this is not the case and we can really proceed with the preparation of the EPC contract sometime between the end of this year and the beginning of next year.
So basically, one contract expires, you get the go-ahead from the EU Commission, and then the next contract is signed with the consortium.
Yes, so we have to also understand that the contract with Bechtel and Westinghouse is a contract between the Polish government, or actually in fact between the Polskie Elektrownie Jądrowe and the Bechtel and Westinghouse consortium. In principle, does not involve the European Commission in any way. However, it is of course true that obtaining such permission from the European Commission makes the Bechtel and Westinghouse consortium much more certain about the financing of the project. However, we must understand that currently this project is fully financed by the Polish government and the business partners that will provide credit for the construction of the Polish nuclear power plant.
So the sooner the nuclear power plant is built, essentially the sooner Poland can say that its energy security has become more multidimensional. So does today's contracts in any way, does it bring the date of the nuclear power plant being operational, does it speed it up in any way? Or really does this contract only move things according to schedule?
Well, no, I think it is exactly. It is moving according to schedule. It's simply the next step in the process, and we are simply on our way. But I think it does bring a lot of certainty to various players in the process of building the power plant, that this project is really ongoing. There are no obstacles, at least from a point of view of the Polish government and Polish companies. And there is, I think, very important to emphasize that nuclear power projects require very robust and very important political support. And the fact that this contract has been signed in the presence of the Polish Prime Minister and the Chief of Department of Energy is an important statement that this project has very sound political support, which may bring much more certainty to various Polish companies, for example, who may consider whether they want to join this project. And I think it's important that they have the certainty that this project will go on according to schedule and will actually happen, so that they can plan the participation in this process.
And just as we wrap up, I just wanted to ask about your contributions, namely that building a plant with this kind of technology has never really been used for an electric generation, in the sense that it requires creating a completely new team. It requires, the support of engineers. And as I understand, your university, the Warsaw University of Technology, is already making some strides in that matter. Are you able to share some details with us?
Yes, well, our university, Warsaw University of Technology, has a very long tradition in actually educating engineers for the nuclear power program. We have actually educated them for the last 15 or 20 years. And we see that recently there is a very significant increase in the interest from students to pursue such education, and we provide such education to them. In addition, we cooperate with the Ministry of Industry in the so-called nuclearization project, which is an attempt to give information about the nuclear power plant project and the various tasks necessary to construct it and then operate it, not only to the engineers that you would normally associate with nuclear power plants, such as nuclear physicists or power engineers, but also many other specialties, engineering specialties like civil engineering, environmental engineering, and many others, in which our university is, of course, educating people. So we hope that Warsaw University of technology will be one of the primary sources of highly skilled professionals which will build and then operate the power plant. And also we are very actively cooperating with all the important participants of the nuclear power program. We have an agreement signed with the Bechtel, we have an agreement signed with the Polskie Elektrownie Jądrowe, and we work with them to also modify our teaching curriculum so that our alumni are best suited to work in the Polish nuclear technology sector, which includes, of course, nuclear power plant, but it's actually much broader than that.
Okay, Professor Adam Kisiel at the Department of Nuclear Physics at the Warsaw Technical University. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes The Bottom Line today. I was your host, Marie Cato. We're on every weekday at 5:10 CET on TVP World. And in the meantime, for the latest in regional business, follow us on X and on tvpworld.com. And for more news and analysis, stay with us on TVP World. Goodbye.